Hey Wii fans, it's Matt with the Nintendo team, and I've got the review for The Blob, third-party game that you should actually buy. Check that out. This original platformer developed by Blue Tongue is made specifically for Wii. It takes advantage of the hardware both technically and mechanically, and I think it's a whole lot of fun. Now I don't know if you know this, but I'm actually in the Guinness Book of World Records for writing the most stories about The Blob. It's around 4 million now. Supposing you missed all that coverage, well, let me give you a quick primer. You are a blob. Well, not you actually, but your character, and you roll him through these monochromatic worlds, bringing color to the land, to the buildings, and to the inhabitants. The evil Inked Corporation, led by Comrade Black, has invaded Chroma City and has started sucking all the color out of the place, which is where you come in. So when you really break it down, this is one part platformer and one part painting game. It's really a lot of fun thanks to some tight control and some clever level designs. Yes, you're going to be rolling and you're going to be jumping around platformer style, but you're also going to be spraying paint on objects and on buildings and on inhabitants in order to solve puzzles, many of them very, very clever. What I think is really going to surprise a lot of people is just how polished the Blob is. From the opening cutscene, which is very crisp and clean, not to mention humorous, you're going to be dazzled by the production values. I also really like what the developer did with the user interface, as you can see right here. It's just very fluid, it's very stylish, and it's very satisfying to move back and forth between the sub-menus, believe it or not. Even the load times, which are brief, allow you to doodle on the screen with the Wii Remote and watch interactive storyboard sequences. Very nicely rounding out the experience is a host of unlockables, including access to cinematics from the game, concept art, and pre-production trailers. Despite the 4 million previews I've written, I still see a comment from time to time from a reader who's still a little confused about what you really do in the Blob. Obviously everyone gets that you paint the world, but what you may not know is that you paint the world for points, and there are submissions within every level that you're going to want to complete in order to advance. Each stage also has a countdown timer that you're going to want to consider as you go. So as you enter a new world, certain areas will be opened, other areas will be locked. You're going to want to earn points to open up those gateways, and you do that by defeating enemies, and by painting buildings, and by linking together combos, and by amassing a whole lot of points. Blob is moved around tightly with the nunchuck's analog stick, and the camera system is controlled automatically for the most part. This gives me pause in other games, but in Blob it works pretty well, and I think you're not going to have too many issues. If you need to, you can rotate the camera with the Wii Remote's D-pad, or you can hit the C button on the nunchuck and center your viewpoint. However, I've rarely found the need to do this, and I don't think you will either. This is a platformer, which means you're going to be doing a lot of jumping, and developer Blue Tongue decided to map the jump function to a downward gesture on the Wii Remote. A move I'm not so much convinced of because every so often you'll make that jump motion and Blob won't react accordingly. Thankfully this is a rarity. Usually the controls work just fine, but you know, if you'd had the option to map everything to a button, you wouldn't be having this issue at all. On the other hand, once you've targeted an enemy, you can make a downward gesture to stomp them out, and that feels very, very good. One thing too that I'd love to see in a sequel is proper integration of the Wii Remote pointer. I feel there's a lot of potential there that went untapped in this year's game. The worlds in The Blob are huge, and they're filled with a variety of different challenges to keep you busy. In addition to the overworld countdown timer, all the challenges that you participate in are timed. So, for example, if you're required to paint a series of billboards different colors, you might have 30 seconds to do that. And this certainly makes some of the challenges a little more difficult than they might have otherwise been. And there's definitely good fun to be had here, whether you're stomping out enemies, using Z targeting to zigzag between buildings, or painting a series of different buildings different colors in a certain time limit. Most of the challenges, though, are pretty straightforward. They're not real head-scratchers, and, especially during the first half of the game, you're not going to be stuck too often. Which I think is a bit of a disappointment. I think they could have done a bit more with it. There are a handful of puzzles in the game that you have to attack in a certain order, applying colors strategically in order to complete them, and I think these are some of the most enjoyable in The Blob. There are 10 immense worlds filled with objectives, but if you're really dedicated, I'm sure you can whip through this game in about 10 hours. What you need to know though is that you can keep coming back for all these secondary missions, including a variety of speed runs and paint challenges, which really extend replay value. Additionally, the Blob features a multiplayer mode in which you can play up to 4 players in split-screen matches. Some of these modes are a little weaker than others, and some of them are actually really good. I really like one option in which one player can roll around the world painting the buildings. He's the one in charge of color. Meanwhile, if you touch him, you take control of color and start painting the buildings. Obviously, the person who's painted the more structures at the end of the timer, he wins. You get 4 players going, and everyone's going to be chasing down one guy in this frantic match trying to get color. It's pretty cool. And I have to say before I go that the Blob is one of the prettier games on Wii. Whether or not you like the style, you have to appreciate some of the technology involved here. Not only is the game running in widescreen and progressive scan, but it's drawing huge worlds filled with structures. It's allowing you to paint those worlds. It's a layering paint. It's got bloom lighting. It's got heat distortion. It's got water transparencies. And it's all running at 60 frames per second in the single-player mode. And the frame rate takes a dip definitely in the multiplayer mode, but it's still pretty solid. And on top of that, what I think is really cool about the Blob is its musical score. You've got a funky, jazzy soundtrack, but even cooler is that as you play the game in real time, you'll be able to layer different instruments depending on what color you're using. So go ahead and take a listen here as I experiment with different instruments or / different colors and really change the whole dynamic of the musical experience. And that is the Blob, a quality third-party effort that I really believe you should support so that we can get more titles like this on our little white system. For our full written review, check out IGN.com.